All right, guys, what is up? Welcome back to the Will to Fight podcast. We're going to talk about dogs. I know I love dogs. And I was walking by the Navy SEAL Monument in Virginia Beach. Brought my kids there this last weekend. And it said at the bottom, it had paw prints on the memorial that stood for all the working dogs that were killed in action. And the quote was, if these dogs didn't die or get killed in action, the stars on this monument would be a lot higher in number. Something to that effect. But it gave me chills when I thought about it because it is the absolute truth. I can't tell you how many times a dog has saved my life in combat, where the dogs found something or did something in order to put me in a better position or get me out of harm's way or be an asset for me when I was in a tough spot. The scenarios are really endless, and dogs are incredible, especially when they're utilized so well. You know, I wanted to give a shout out to Rescue 22 Foundation on this episode because they are just doing some groundbreaking stuff in the industry and for our veterans right now. Being able to rescue a dog and pair it with a veteran that needs help, it's just an amazing, amazing thing. And I hope you guys go check out Rescue 22. They are on a path to do outstanding stuff for veterans and make a huge impact. So I fully support them. I've been a supporter of them since I found out about them. So definitely watch their journey. They're doing some research right now that's going to help change the game of giving veterans a better quality of life. And John's going to get into it and tell you more about that too on this episode. The interesting about this episode is that John and I were best friends growing up, and we both became Navy SEALs. Now, how that happened and if it's ever happened in the history of the teams, I really don't know. But we grew up across the street from each other. We made a bet when we were younger, and here we are today. And we're still working together. We still support each other. We love each other. He's like a brother to me, and I'm super pumped for you guys to listen to this episode. This episode is brought to you by Dynamis Alliance that made all this possible. Everything that we have done up to this point has been a foundation set from all the hard work of everybody that's coming to Dynamis, that's given a hand and been supportive of what we're doing, all the way from the people that are buying our products to the people that have come into this building. Everybody has pushed forward, and here we are today. Everything happens for a reason, and I am so grateful that this podcast exists because it's changing lives every single day. And we are already getting some amazing feedback. So thank you for all that. Please keep, giving us a shout out. Let people know about the podcast. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to us. And we just want to change people's lives. That's what it's all about. This episode is also brought to you by Redcon1, the best supplement company in existence. They're evolving every day. They are so well-rounded with their offering. They even have a supplement called Fade Out. It's one of the best supplements that you can take before you get to sleep. If you're having a hard time sleeping or you don't get very restful sleep, definitely give this a shot. I've taken it. It's helped me get into deeper sleep. And it's just cool because there's not a lot of supplement companies out there that will offer a protein and then offer other enhancing supplements as well to kind of go around your routine, getting up, pre-workout, post-workout, in-workout, before you go to bed. They're just a well-rounded offering. So go check them out, redcon1.com, and you guys can use the code DOM, D-O-M, to save 20%. All right, guys, I'm pumped for this. I'm pumped for you to listen about our journey as friends, and here we go. We are all going to have to fight. I don't care if it's mentally, physically, or spiritually. We are all going to have to fight for something in our lives. My goal is to help you forge your will to fight, to become the best that you can possibly be for yourself, your family, and everybody else around you. I'm Dom Raso. Welcome to the Will to Fight podcast. All right, guys, what is up? I'm just going to get right into it with a story overseas with a dog to talk about how valuable these dogs really are, because the guy that I'm getting ready to introduce has dedicated his life to this craft. And it really all came to fruition in this moment overseas we were going after some really bad dudes. They were loaded out to the hilt. They had AKs, RPGs, and we were on the backside of this building, and it was me and a buddy. I'll call him D for right now to keep his name out of this, but me and him went to the backside of the building, and we looked at each other like, we're not going to get anything done. Everybody's going to get all the action. They're inside of the compound, and we're just staring at this wall. We're like, no. But we had a window. We had one window, which was fully caged out with steel, a window, and then a drape. So we couldn't even see anything. We were like, are we going to even be able to break this thing or pull the curtain out of the way? So we're trying to time the execution of everything to be able to get a peek in the window to help the guys out that were going in. So when we got on the window, we heard the execute call. And when that came out, we had this like non-verbal on nods communication going on, which would have looked like a clown show to anybody else. We were like, all right, you punch the glass, I will pull the curtain, you take the shots, and we're nodding back and forth, and it's pretty comical. But we had an idea of what we were going to do. So on execute, I punched, he pulled the curtain, cut the shit out of himself, and immediately I saw two guys strapping up with AKs. I took the shots, and these guys went down. And when they were down in that window, you know, there's still an issue. You know, we couldn't see over the ledge because we didn't have anything to step up on. So I'm like, I wasn't sure if they were 100% down. So the next call before these guys moved through was to get the dog to go in there. And they said they were going to send the dog in, which was Diesel at the time. I don't know if you guys have heard enough dog stories. You probably heard this name come up. But I knew that he was going to go in there. And I looked at the room and the way it was shaped like an L. And to go grab these bodies and then pull them through that, I'm like, there's no way that this dog is going to be able to grab the body and then get it around the corner. And the dog ran in, and I'm sitting here just doubting what the dog is going to be able to do. And Diesel comes in and just gets his mouth on this guy's shoulder and just starts dragging it like 5 inches, 10 inches at a time. And by the way, this dog's toy was a freaking Humvee tire. So I'm like, okay, that's cool, but there's no way he's going to get it around the turn. How's he going to get this guy around the turn? And as you get to the turn, and I'm still in disbelief if this dog's going to be able to pull this off, I just see the legs flying and flailing all over the place, and eventually the legs just disappeared. And I'm like, legit, the dog just pulled this 180-pound guy out of this hole and then comes back in and does it again with the second dude. And I was like, what? And in that moment, I'm like, these dogs are so invaluable to our success. And that's just one of hundreds of things that dogs have done overseas. And I honestly cannot tell you the amount of times that a dog has probably saved my life. As a point man, as a guy that's always trying to lead in and create the routes, how many times we've had to turn around because a dog has probably saved our lives from stepping in an IED or getting into a situation that we wouldn't have been able to get out of in that moment. Dogs are extremely invaluable. And I am pumped to have you on the show. My best friend growing up, super successful in the dog world now. Dogs have become your life, every sense of the word. You are a veteran Navy SEAL, dog handler in the military with combat experience, and so much to bring to bear of what you're doing today and how valuable it is. So not only are dogs valuable inside of the military, outside of the military, I have a dog myself. You're giving people the tools they need on a daily basis to protect their homes, protect their families. John has been leading the edge on the tactics and the processes that he's created on how to train dogs today to get them to do everything from protecting a family to doing all kinds of stuff. And recently married too. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We just went out to Vegas to celebrate your wedding.
Yeah.
And his wife as well is involved in so many different dog aspects. So I'm excited to see you guys. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one of my best friends, John Devine from Devine K9s.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here. I mean, I feel like this is my East Coast home anyway, but I'm totally going to record that intro, and anytime anyone asks who I am, I'm just going to hit play, and they're going to be like, that's my story, and then they'll be completely underwhelmed from that point forward. But
that was totally just a summary too. I mean, at the end of the day, it's so cool to see guys like you get out. And we were just talking about the percentage of dudes that get out of the military, that continue to do what they love or what they're passionate about, and then guys that do something completely different. I think the cool thing that I want to tell people right off the bat, because it's an awesome part of the story, and it anchors us together all the time, but we grew up together. Ever since I can remember, 4, 5, 6 years old, that we were saying we were going to become SEALs. Like it was literally a life passion that we grew up. And I think the interesting thing is you see this journey of saying, okay, I'm going to become a SEAL, how small a percentage of people that is, to be able to do it and follow through with it. And then also afterwards continue to do what you're passionate about. I think one of the interesting things is right off the bat, we talk about mindset, is like, at what point during your childhood did you start to recognize that either we were different from everybody else, or that you were different from the people around you on what your journey was going to include, in that process of saying, that's it, I'm going to be a SEAL. That's my vision for life. That's my goal. And I'm going to attack it with everything that I got.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, I think it's pretty normal to be like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. I want to be a Navy SEAL. But, as you grow and then you just don't ever lose that dream. I think a lot of times people lose their childhood dreams, or they just grow and develop new dreams. Maybe they didn't know that, becoming an executive of a Fortune 500 company was going to be so awesome for them and their family situation. I think for us, we discovered our dream at such a young age. Like, that was pretty extraordinary. Not many people discover that dream at 5 and 6 years old. And as we grew older, that's when we kind of discovered that we are a little bit different. When we're playing paintball, scuba diving, and then tying each other up and quite literally doing stuff that would probably get some people killed, like tying each other up in the bay, unmonitored, no adult supervision. Good job, mom and dad.
Yeah. No safeties.
No safety
boats.
Nothing. Tying each other up, practicing like stuff we would see SEALs doing on like the Discovery Channel and things like that. Stuff that, 8-year-olds are probably not supposed to be doing, but, that's not how we thought. We're like, hey, we're going to be doing this someday anyway. Might as well get a head start on this,
Yeah. I think about it and I reflect on it too. So even just to talk about it, what was it, because you think of all the things that went through your head. Oh, I could be a lawyer. I could be a firefighter. I could be a policeman. And then all of a sudden we found out what SEALs were. And I remember you doing some research and you knew like a friend of a family member.
Yeah.
And you told me one day, you're like, these are these guys, the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
The bad dudes that are going to hunt bad people. And I remember the day you told me, I was like, what is that? I had no idea. And it sparked something in me that really never left. What was it for you in that moment that you kind of clung on to, as a kid?
I think it was also, in our minds as a kid, we thought of that as like the ultimate challenge. That if you could make it to become a Navy SEAL, that could be like, for us in that moment, that was the hardest thing we could think of doing.
That's a good point. Yep.
And we didn't really think much beyond that. We were just like, just becoming a SEAL would be like, it's like, to us, was the equivalent of winning the gold medal at the Olympics. That was like our bar that was set.
Well, that's interesting because, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm trying to ask questions that are also getting me to reflect, because these are the same things that I've reflected on. But if that was the pinnacle, if there wasn't anything harder in that moment, I always talk about, warriors are absolutely forged, not necessarily born. You can be set up for success, but the path that you're on, especially how your parents raise you, the experiences that you have such an impact on who you become. But in that moment, if we thought that was the hardest thing that we could be and the hardest thing to become, we were a product of our experiences in our environment, and how we were able to maintain going back to that again and again and again is like those experiences that came into our lives, like what our parents taught us, the environment that we grew up into. I don't know how, sometimes even now I'm having a hard time like piecing it together of how all those things just led to, all right, now you're 17, I'm 18, you're going into buds now and you're going to go attack this career. There was so many things from a mindset level that prepared me for that, because somebody could have come in at any one point and maybe put something in front of you that was harder to say, instead of being a Navy SEAL, you could be X, And I played football. I did karate growing up. We trained. We didn't even know what the hell we were doing. Literally like, whoa, we saw jiu-jitsu. Hoist Gracie won. Let's go up and just beat the crap out of each other. Literally, that's how it happened.
Triangle chokes. Let's see how this works. Yeah.
Like literal test and evaluation. So I'm just intrigued by the fact that we both clung on to that so deeply that we followed through with it years later. And as I reflect on the experiences that we had and being a product of all the experiences, it's just interesting to look at,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as kids, we even like experimented with like doing other things. Like I think at one point we're like, being a lawyer might be really hard. Like we were like thinking like we had this idea that lawyers were like almost like spies, at one point.
100%.
Yeah. Like lawyers are like they're constantly like on the go because there's always like clients that are trying to kill them and stuff. Like, we had no idea what that was.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that.
Yeah.
They're like outsmart the other guy.
Yeah, no, but nothing ever beat the sheer like hardness of how difficult it would be to become a SEAL. So that's, I think, what kept us always focused on that one path.
So the things that we did to torture each other along the way, I think that's a pretty interesting aspect. I mean, I remember days that we were lucky to leave the pool.
Yeah.
Because we were like, oh, this is like a 12-foot deep pool. We just bring things to tie each other up with. And the lifeguards weren't great back then.
Yeah,
they didn't stop us from doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Thank
you, lifeguards, for not supervising us.
Right. I'm serious.
And aiding us in our training.
You can't even go to a rec center around here without them telling you can't do underwater breath holding.
Oh, yeah.
So where does a kid go now if he doesn't have his own pool to be able to do that type of stuff? If he's not in the program and he's 12, 13, 14, I mean, that's an interesting concept. We're definitely lucky, I think, that we made it out of some of the situations that we had because, like I said, we weren't monitored. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. But I think that that's the beauty of what we went through, is adapting and to figure it out. And most people ask me at that age, what do I do to set myself up for success? And I always say, make yourself comfortable with being uncomfortable and be willing to adapt to anything that's unknown. And that's a lot of what it was for us. It was always hard. It was always the pinnacle of what we could create in our environment. And anything from playing paintball to in extreme scenarios. And believe me, we would turn paintball into extreme scenarios.
Oh, yes.
We found a way to make it very hard, very difficult, low crawling, friggin' putting, ghillie suits on. I mean,
yeah. No, I remember just like setting up matches where you're like, you know what? Let's just try everyone versus me. Let's just see how it goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like we would do that kind of shit because we just wanted to see where the limits were.
Yep. What we could get away with.
Yeah.
That was a big part of it too. I think the journey that we're on was started at childhood. There's no doubt in my mind I got off track at some point, like 14, 15 years old. I talk about that often because most kids will find out something they cling on to and then they'll get distracted by life. People will come in, drugs, alcohol, people hanging around with the wrong crowd. And no doubt I got caught up in that. Luckily, I got my ass handed to me so much where I woke up one day, I'm like, you know what? I was like, I've always wanted to do X. And even you and I mean, we went for a couple of years there. We didn't talk much. We were kind of off on our own program because I was friggin' causing a bunch of ruckus all over the place. But eventually, here we are today, back sitting in the same room, doing a podcast together. And like, I love, and it fires me up to see you be successful, especially with what you're doing now and Devine K9s and the nonprofit with Rescue 22. Like, I couldn't be happier to see where we started to where we are today. And I always talk about like the friendships that we have in our lives are so critical, and you might struggle, you might hit bumps in the road, but going from, being kids and, I remember, I'll never forget being on the porch playing G.I. Joes. We were like, all right, who's going to become a Navy SEAL first? Yep. I always say this bet between you and I, because you finally freaking paid up.
I know.
But we had a bet
turned out really
going.
good for both of us, didn't it?
It did turn out really good. And he ended up just paying me back, but we bet $100 and who was going to become a SEAL first. I beat him. I never let him live that down. And then eventually, after bugging him for years, he finally paid me back in Vegas.
It took like 20 years, but
yeah, it took like 20 years.
Yeah.
I'll waive the interest at this point. But it's cool to see that journey come to fruition. So, I talk a lot about honor. I talk a lot about purpose. And you can't get to where you are today without that type of drive and purpose. And I know a lot of your background from growing up. So maybe tell everybody a little bit about, how you grew up and what really forged who you are today.
Sure. So, I grew up in one of the most suburban towns. It was like your Mach 1 motto suburb town, and yes, like, if we look back at our childhoods, we did a lot of like crazy things, but when I look back on it, I don't look at it as like super remarkable. I wasn't like a Rhodes Scholar by the age of 8. I wasn't like the super gifted athlete kid that was like, winning the Junior Olympics and anything. I was always like very athletic in the sense I always was doing a sport, always was like really active. Heck, we did Boy Scouts together, so we were always like really engaged in everything that was going on around us. But I just never really saw myself as like a remarkable kid. Matter of fact, like when I was young, I struggled in school. Like I really did struggle a lot. Doctors wanted to put me on like ADD medication.
Yep, I remember that.
And, I declined and decided to just, deal with it myself.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Even that point right there, like today, how many times, literally, I think this is, people probably talk about it a lot, but I think it's important to stop right there because you just brought that up. And so many kids get put into situations where they're not given a choice.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, can you imagine if you had made the choice to go down that road,
Man.
if you would be here today in the capacity that you are?
What's funny is that actually, if I try to think back to my mindset of back then, I think somebody somewhere told me like, if you're on like ADD medication, you might not be able to get into the military. And I was like, that might was like enough.
Yeah.
It was like
100%.
You know what I mean?
That's powerful.
And I was like, you know what? This is gonna be harder, but I'm like, I don't care. I'll do whatever it is I need to do to make this work.
That's crazy. The will, and we always talk about reprogramming our minds, and how many times I've had to do that throughout my career, like reprogramming the way we think about life so we can be more successful. That choice right in that moment for somebody saying might, you had to take personal accountability and force your will upon what was going on with what people thought that you needed to get to where you are right now. Like, that fires me up, man.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of kids out there that could be so successful, so driven, so capable, and they're like, oh, just shove this down your throat and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And then, listen, I'm not saying that there isn't a time and a place for that. And it's very confusing for me, especially. I'm not an expert. Mm-hmm. And the way that I see it is that more often than not, it's misconstrued. It's probably not needed instead of trying to deal with it yourself. Yeah. And you took the hard way. And look at where you are now.
Yeah.
It's proof.
Yeah. And I want to say I was probably maybe like, 10 years old, 11 years old at the time.
Which is crazy because you don't know anything.
Yeah, and like you're not even close to an adult. You don't really make adult decisions usually then. But I also remember like my parents, you would think like if you were to look back on this, like your parents would just make you take your medication. Like, no, the doctor told you to take this meds. You must take your meds. My mom kind of just like respected my decision. Like she was like, well, it's your body and
she's awesome.
And it's your brain. And so if you are telling me this medication doesn't make you feel right, then I'll help you as much as I can without having to take medication.
So huge. Dude, I could give your mom a huge hug right now.
Yeah.
Like, I love your mom.
Absolutely.
She practically raised me across the street. We literally grew up across the street from each other. But I think that's such a big part of what people go through today. Like, do I need this? Do I need this? And is it going to help me become the best version of myself? So I'm glad you brought that up, man.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that, growing up, we literally grew up across the street from each other. Like we saw each other's houses like from our windows. Yep. That's how close we were. And it was a tribe really, so our parents really, the community that we had was so like strong and that everyone hung out together. Everybody knew each other. And it's different to me. It was different back then than it is today. Obviously culture has changed, society has changed, how people engage with each other has changed. But the one thing that stays the same is like, as long as you intentionally keep that connection, I think that was a really strong thing that I never truly felt completely alone as a kid. I always felt like there was someone there that cared about us,
No doubt.
So,
yeah, that's a big deal. The contrast between where we were and where we are today, and then looking at the culture in general, the coolest thing is like we crushed a workout this morning. We did armor up. We came in here doing our test and evaluation, like love it. Like when I'm sitting here with one of my best friends growing up, and everybody goes on their own journey. I always feel like, around that 15, 20, 25 year range, you start to kind of like, you got to go figure yourself out. You got to go and venture off into life. But here we are, I'm 37 years old, and coming back is like, we've been talking more than we ever have. We've been hanging out with each other more than we ever have. Okay. You start to realize like the value in these relationships that you have. And when you talk about the tribe, like being across the street from each other, having our families connected, having those people that cared about you, like I feel like it's such a missing element today that keeps people accountable. Like if I went over your house and I started doing something stupid, guess what?
Yeah.
Your mom had no problem grabbing me and being like, hey, like get your act together, And I think that's such an important element where some people today, parents are afraid to even say anything.
Yeah.
You know, like they see one kid from another house, like, I don't really know what to say. Should I discipline? I'm going to get in trouble. It's like, there was none of that back then.
Yeah.
It's like, if we got caught getting out of line, we knew about it.
It was like, I feel like today sometimes people are afraid of like real conflict. You know, where we were, we like lived in conflict, and not
Love
conflict. It wasn't like conflict like it was a war zone. It was just that people were not afraid to have some form of conflict.
Yeah, that's interesting.
To fix things.
100%.
You know?
So let's talk about that, because I thrive in conflict, and it's a foreign concept to people. So even my leadership style, like I seek conflict, and it's today's like nobody wants to hurt anybody else's feelings. But when I see an opportunity to strengthen one another, I don't just start a fight for no reason. But when I see the uncomfortable conversation, I'm like, let's hit it head on. Let's have it. Let's get it out of the way. I don't want to sit here. I don't want to go to sleep because we didn't talk about something. I don't want an issue to be on my mind and we didn't hash it out. And I think maybe that is part of growing the way we grew up, because we handled it right then and there. I remember one of our neighbors, you know, this kid was picking on me, and my dad was like, go kick his ass right now. Like, do not sit here and come in the house and complain to me. Go kick his ass if he's bothering you. And that was the attitude I had. I couldn't go cry to my dad. My dad was like, I don't care what you have to say. If he's giving you a hard time, that's up to you. That's your responsibility. So what did I do? I opened the door up. I went right back outside, and I grabbed the kid by the throat, and I threw him on the ground and tried to kick his ass. It was how old were we? Like 9 or 10?
It was
like a tussle.
You know, imagine.
And the whole neighborhood was there, though. I'm pretty sure we.
But like, it's funny because the whole neighborhood like would like watch, but like no one was intervening.
No, they let us work it out. I mean, we worked it out.
I even remember the kid's dad came out and like spectated. And your dad was like, "Go ahead, Dad."
It was a legit neighborhood. Like, this tension's been building. We're gonna let these boys work it out. I walked into my dad's house. I said 2 words. He's like, "Get back outside and go do your thing." Like, I'm not gonna sit here and listen to you bitch about some kid giving you a hard time. So that accountability measure was like a neighborhood thing. And when you said the tribe, that really hit home with me. We had a community center in our neighborhood that tries to keep people together. So that's cool. I mean, I think that aspect is probably a part of what's kept us together too, knowing that there's an accountability there. Like, I know you better than anybody. Like, I know where you grew up. I know what you did. I know the shit you screwed up. I know the shit you did really well, right? We made a lot of mistakes. We figured them out and we adapted, and here we are today. But I don't think we ever let those mistakes hold us back.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they say? A mistake isn't a mistake if you learn something from it. You know, it's education at that point. So
always learning. So on this journey of becoming a SEAL, you know, obviously I talk about honor and that purpose of how we grew up, that tribe aspect of who you are, who I am, our parents being very tight together, having that accountability circle. As you've evolved over time, I have a definition of the way I'm able to convey what honor means to me, but what does honor mean to you? What is the essence and the purpose of honor behind John?
Okay. So, you know, anyone who kind of came from like a warrior culture, warrior background might know this kind of textbook answer, but honor is, you know, being able to do the right thing even when no one's looking. You know, that's like my definition of honor. And, you know, I just felt like growing up, I kind of had good examples of that. You know, I feel like I had good role models growing up, good people that I could look up to, you know, and I think that helped because for me, honor wasn't really something that I had to like strive for in the sense like, oh, I always need to make sure I'm seeking honor. I was like, no, I just kind of just did unto others as I would want done unto me.
Yep. Golden rule.
Yeah. And we were just raised that way, in that, you know, the right thing, that always was the right thing to do, was just to treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. And, you know, I was in I don't want to say a unique situation, but, you know, my parents were separated at a young age. But I always had a dad in the picture. And then I also was almost lucky enough to have 2 dads in the picture.
Yep.
You know, so in a weird way, I mean, props to anyone who has 2 dads in whatever way. But, you know, it's like I had 2 different dads that each had like their strengths and weaknesses, but I had all those strengths. You know, I had exposure to both of them, you know. So I'm just like so grateful for having, you know, multiple father figures in my life that helped to really mentor me and shape me to who I am today. And, you know, my dad, he's awesome. Obviously, you know, my dad,
no, I love
you
know,
dad. And, yeah, he's one of my heroes because, you know, he represents that to me, and that he's
Vietnam vet.
Yep. Vietnam vet. And I think that was also like something that, inspired me to want to serve.
Same
inspired
here.
me to want to go to the military.
Huge.
And I even thought back to my dad, even when I was overseas, you know, because the differences were a lot different. Like my dad was 19 years old when he was overseas in Vietnam, drafted,
Yeah.
you know, where, you know, you and I, we volunteered. We were like, hell yeah, you know, we want to do this. But, you know, the war in Vietnam is so much different. It's so much more unpopular, and the troops had zero support, you know. So for him to actually answer the call when the country needed it was at such an age, 19.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I used to think about that when I was like, read my emails, like eat my care packages, you know, checking FaceTime, you know, watching movies, you know, in my air-conditioned room, you know. So I'm like, man, my dad was 19 years old, and he lived in some jungle
It was raw
in the highlands of Vietnam,
Yep.
getting shot at. Not sure if the 21-year-old, you know, lieutenant that just got, you know, sent to them 2 weeks ago that's supposed to be their platoon leader is going to get them all killed. You know, like they had much different problems than what we had, you know? So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just reflecting on all that too, just the how that drives you when you're younger. And the funny thing is that you just said, it never really clicked with me before if I thought about it, but my parents were separated at a young age. I had multiple father figures. We actually had that in common.
Yeah.
So we knew really well, like I had to go to one house, I had to go to the other house. I went to the house on the weekends, I came back during the week.
Yep.
And that was kind of my life for a while.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of choose to adapt. I think that was a huge part of my ability to shift to different environments, knowing that one life was here, one life was here. I never knew what it was like to have both parents together.
Yeah.
And that was something I think we shared.
Yeah.
You know, and you see the different aspects of life that way.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember seeing other kids we went to school with. You know, they have, you know, family issues where their parents get divorced and things like that. And everyone has different situations, so I'm never going to judge anyone for their family situations and whatnot. But we never, like, dwelled in it. We were like, oh, man, if only my parents were back together. You know what I mean? We were just like, this is awesome. Like, I get to go here on these days and here. We were always looking for the opportunity.
Yep.
And everything.
Yep.
You know,
and there was always advantages to
yeah.
both.
We're like, you know what? We get 2 Christmases.
Yeah, totally get 2
Yeah.
Christmases. And
This
2
is awesome.
birthdays.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's definitely positives that you find in that stuff. So a little bit of backstory. You know, I know John and I could be here all day talking about our childhood and, you know, I don't know, we talked about possibly messing around with writing a book or something, but I just think it would be cool because there's a lot of kids out there from that age that are like, I want to become a SEAL. Now, granted, the process, and once you say that, because look at how much public information out there. There wasn't much of anything. I didn't even know what the screening test was until I got to boot camp. Legitimately, didn't even know what the side stroke was.
There wasn't Google really.
Nope.
It was
Didn't have YouTube, didn't have any of that stuff. Wasn't like it is now.
There was the library.
Yeah.
And a library card.
And we had $4.
Yeah.
I think I counted $4
Yes.
on the shelf.
And we actually started going to other libraries in search of other Navy SEAL books.
That's right.
And then
And then
we ran out of those. We started yard sailing for the potential opportunity. We discovered one that just happened not to be in any library because we found a few.
Yeah.
That were just happened
right.
to be in some old
Yep.
yard sale box. And yard sailing. No eBay.
Yeah, that's
no Amazon.
The difference between now and then, I don't think the principles or the drive would change as a kid. Because when you think about when we locked on, I think you said a key thing about it was the most difficult challenge that we could find in our minds to push ourselves. So it was like the pinnacle of like, how do we work harder towards that pinnacle? I mean, we were working hard towards that pinnacle with like 4 books at the library, bouncing around to different, you know, limited resources. And then getting to boot camp, not knowing what the side stroke was, almost practically drowning myself, and then getting up and adapting and doing it and passing it the next time.
Yeah.
It was that level of commitment where it didn't matter. Where now I feel like kids get to ask way too many questions.
Mm-hmm.
They dive into it so deeply that it starts to create a paralysis in their ability to actually just go do it and get it done. Because for me, it was like, I'm going to adapt and do whatever the hell it takes. And now it's like they get so much information. It's overwhelming to be like, well, what's the perfect workout routine to be able to do this well? Dude, I was running in boots down the street, had no idea what I was doing, didn't even know my distance, wasn't timing anything. I was just running. I was trying to drown myself into the ocean. I was trying to do push-ups or whatever I could grab onto. It didn't really matter. It was just that nothing was going to stop me. You know, was it similar for you in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, yes, in the sense of I went to Bud's, after you, matter of fact. I mean, I went to your Bud's graduation.
Yes, you did.
You know what I mean? So it's interesting too, because, my experiences at Bud's are definitely different than yours, in that I also think it was different. It's different for everybody, in that it's always going to expose your weaknesses. And so these kids that are asking everybody for advice, even if you're like asking people who have been to Bud's, their Bud's might be different than your Bud's. And I'm not saying they changed the program just for each individual. I'm saying that that person you're talking to might have been a gifted runner. Running might not be a thing for him because he was just an inherently gifted runner. But maybe swimming was really hard for him, and he had to work his ass off for swimming. And all he's going to tell you is like, man, you better get in that water and just drown yourself and keep swimming and don't worry about anything else. Just swim. Well, maybe you're a pretty good swimmer, but you can't do push-ups for shit. So you might be focusing on the wrong things. Really, you should be focused on making your weaknesses your strengths. And that's something that took me a long time to actually learn that. But I also think the paralysis by analysis is a real thing, not just for kids going through Bud's, but for everything, for starting a business.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
So overwhelming.
For getting in shape, starting a business especially. And I was even a victim of that in business sometimes. At least I think I am, But I'm always like, okay, I want to do this next thing, but how should I do it? Should I do it this way, that way? And then I'll research it. And I'm like, you know what? With all this time I've researched, if I just tried one thing,
do it.
I would have found out, and inherently that's where I find myself doing a lot of times. You just try it, see if it works. Okay, it failed. Now I'll try the next thing after I learn those lessons, and now you organically learned how to do it.
Yeah, there's a couple things, but a lot of people like to speculate. Well, if I do this, this might happen. If I do this, this might happen. It's like we get so stuck in the speculation, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it and see what the outcome is going to be. My favorite quote is George Patton, violent plan executed right now, a good violent plan. So if you just get it moving, you're going to learn a lot more on the journey there. But I agree that kids are probably overwhelmed with a state of paralysis, with so much information. When I think if you're doing anything, don't let that detract from what your passion really is. Mm-hmm. Stay on track and know that you're going to do whatever it takes, because you're going to learn a lot on the journey. Like I said, I went out and kicked my own ass with whatever resources that I had. And when the challenge came up, like, I don't know that swim, well, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to figure it out as quick as I possibly can. You have to learn to adapt. I mean, I say adaptive with everything. I've got Adaptive X as an apparel line. I've got adaptation as one of the Dynamis core values, is like adapt. If you're not willing to adapt, you're going to fall off and you're going to die off quickly. So I think that's a huge part of it as well. With that journey, and I heard you almost wanted to go into it a little bit, and I think this is just great stuff, because I remember even part of our journey was like you going through the process of going to Bud's. Like you said, we went in different times, but you still freaking did it. To me, that's like, game over. We became SEALs. We did it. Here we are. We're grown-ass men now, and we've got...
like, damn it, I still owe them the $100.
You still owe me the $100.
Yeah, yep.
But I think that your journey is very interesting. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of hearing just a little bit of that. But go into what your will to fight story was on your journey, and how you... Because you're sitting here today,
okay.
Bro.
Yeah.
And the day you called me was like... That's it. But it took a while to get there.
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. So, I originally did join the Navy to be a SEAL. Like I joined it, I did the, whatever their Bud's pipeline was, is what I did. I had to go to A school ahead of time. I even did, I was a parachute rigger, and I was like, it's just a short school that I can go to, get to Bud's quickest.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, so I show up at Bud's, and, you go through in-doc in first phase, but what ended up happening to me is like day by day, well, long story short, I didn't make it through Bud's in my first try. I completely just broke down, and I ended up having like triple spiral stress fractures, by the time I was done. And it took me like months and months of recovery. Even after Bud's, I couldn't run for like 3 to 6 months. Like I was just like, was not even supposed to really be walking around for much of it. And, that's why I say like Bud's is different for everybody,
Totally.
Where I looked at like the numbers. I was like, hey, I'm fast enough. I can pass the run times. I can pass the swim times. I can pass the O course times. Hey, I'm good. Like, let's just focus on those times. Focus on these numbers. Focus on maybe trying to shave off a second off that 4 mile run time. Try to like shave off 10 seconds off my swim time. Or like at the end of the day, those numbers don't mean shit. Like no one gives a shit about those numbers. I've never, ever heard a SEAL talk about what their run times were or what their swim times were.
I don't even remember.
I don't even know.
I just know I passed.
So exactly. So I don't even know what to tell, these, future tadpoles. I'm like, oh, well, John, what was your run times? I'm like, I don't even freaking know. I just know I was passing, and I did. So the one element that I really, learned from that first experience was the mileage. So like my body was biometrically not good for running, like long distance.
Yeah.
I just was not running the right way. And my body couldn't handle it, and, stress fractures and stuff, and, falling apart. Had like every single overuse injury you can pretty much possibly get from, the waist down. So it was a rough go. The good news is they pretty much did, give me a recommendation to come back at a future date. But I will tell you one thing at the time, that the pipeline was pretty streamlined for you to get in and like go to buds. Like as long as you pass those tests, you show up there in that grinder. As long as you don't quit and you pass your tests to get there, you're gonna make it there. You're part of the pipeline. Once you go out to the fleet, it's kind of a different story. There isn't a fleet pipeline to go to buds. It's you have to find your way back. And I went to the fleet out in Lemoore, California. And, I show up there and I'm like, wow, there's actually a lot of other people that didn't make it through buds here. I'm like, wow, it was like a buds graveyard. And the mentality there was like buds duds. They were like kind of like this joke. It was like, aha, buds duds, ha ha ha. Of course, these people never tried to do anything, more difficult than boot camp in their entire lives, which, no harm, no foul. There's, a job for everyone to contribute. Yep. And some people were awesome parachute riggers, and that was their passion there, and they loved doing it. And I thank them for their service. But my experience there was like, it was kind of like a dark hole for me. Because one, I just failed at my life dream, and I'm broken. But when I left, I still had this spark, in a sense. I didn't feel like I'd given up on myself, because I knew when I left, I was like, I'm not done. I'm just broken. I know I can rebuild. It might take a little bit of time, but I knew it wasn't surrender for me. It was until I make it back. So the moment that I, got there, I immediately started trying to do like rehab and physical therapy. And trust me, they don't have medical physical therapy for shit. I'm like looking at stuff online and trying to figure out like what I should do to like help fix myself. But then I realized something. I couldn't run more than 20 miles a week without having an overuse injury. And I was like, what is going on with me? What is wrong with my body? Why can't I run more than 20 miles a week? Why can't everyone else? And I was like losing my mind. I'm like, because I knew the numbers. I was like, I cannot become a SEAL if I can't run more than 20 miles a week. 20 miles a week. I was like, how am I supposed to do this? So I became like a freaking mad scientist about this shit. I'm like, going to like running coaching classes and things like that. People are like, oh, you need to like roll your shins or like pick stuff up with your feet, and like nothing's working. I'm like moving marbles with my toes and stuff, and like nothing's working. I can't run more than 20 miles a week. It wasn't until I finally found this thing called pose running. And so for all you runners out there, you might know what this means, but it means to shift the weight to the balls of your feet instead of the heels of your feet, and to run on your forefeet. So your heel hardly ever touches the ground. I switched to that, and it was the most painful thing I've ever done, because after I do that, my calves, I think the first time I ever ran like that, you're supposed to do like a slow process. So what do? I go run like
jump right into it.
3-4 miles.
No other way to do it.
And then I'm like wheelchair ridden for a few days after that. But I transitioned to that, and I found out that was one way that I was able to, overcome that run. It was like a running disability, essentially. Once I switched to that, it was like someone removed the training wheels. I was like 20 miles a week, 25 miles a week, 30 miles a week, 35 miles a week.
That's awesome.
40 miles a week, 45 miles a week. And then like till like my mileage was like really sustainable. So now physically, I'm starting to get to that point where I feel like I'm like, all right, let's do this. So I start the process of starting my buds package and all that. Meanwhile, the command that I'm at, I was a parachute rigger, so they were not supportive of my dreams. They were supportive of, what they have going on there, which is packing parachutes into a sack. And I did my job and whatnot, and but my passion was obviously going back to buds. So my routine was wake up, get a workout in, go to work, get your afternoon workout in. It was usually like a CrossFit style workout during the afternoons. And then after work, workout again. And that was my routine the entire time I was there. But when I went to put my package in, they would straight up say, "Nah, no, you're probably gonna have to maybe do a few, maybe like a tour or two on an aircraft carrier before we can send you there." And I'm like, I don't like that answer. I'm gonna have to find somebody else to give me this answer. So I kind of had to make my own way. So, I tried that a few times. They kept denying me, which, I found out that legally they actually, per the process in the military, they weren't even allowed to deny me. They just have to send it up, but that didn't stop them from denying me. So I actually volunteered to go back out to sea this one time, where my command forgot to send a parachute rigger out to sea. And I saw that it happened, and I kind of peeked my head in the office, and I'm like, "Hey, I heard you guys need a parachute rigger out in that aircraft carrier." And they looked at me and they're like, "John, we can't ask you to go back." I'm like, it was like as if I was like on a kamikaze mission into like the Midway or something. It's like, it's just going out to sea for like 4 or 5 weeks. It sucks, but I was like, "I'll do it." Like, if you do this, I will do everything in my power to get you back to Buds. I was like, remember those words? I still had my sea bag packed. So I was on an airplane 2 hours later,
nice.
Headed back out to sea. But before I left, the CO of our command came down to the paraloft, which he might come down once or twice a year, to check on what these guys are doing in the paraloft. And he called attention on deck. He's like, no. I just wanted to come down here to thank this parachute rigger who volunteered to go back out to sea. And I'm like, "Well, sir, that was me." He was like, "Hey, PR3 at the time." He was like, "Is there anything that I can do for you?" I was like, "Well, sir."
Funny you should ask.
I have a Buds package that I just submitted, and it's probably gonna be on your desk anytime now. And I would just love your support on pursuing my dreams. And he's like, "Done." And you get back, done. And then I'm like, no one's ever said anything like this to me ever. So I'm like, before we left, I want to clutch onto him and ask him something else. And I'm like, and also there's a diver and EOD unit here on base that I would just love to go maybe TAD to train under them for a few months before I leave. He's like, "Done. My secretary will have it waiting for you when you get back." Meanwhile, my actual my division had no idea any of this was happening. So I do my little time out in the boat, come back, and then I go to give them my TAD orders, and they're flipping the hell out because they just lost a body or something. And I'm like, "Later, guys." So I go there, and I'm super, super grateful for the time that I had with those divers. They really did help me in the sense none of them ever went to Buds before, but what they did do is dive school. So they knew second phase for us. So they put me through diver Buds while I was there. A lot of hazing, stuff like that. But their version of hazing was let's see how many weight belts we can make them tread water with a tank. And let's do some drown proofing with them. Let's do some let's do some hits on them underwater. And it's just they're guinea pig to torture. Obviously I'd already been to Buds. I knew my weaknesses, so I was obviously working out already. But that inevitably did help me for second phase later. Yeah. Second phase, I will never say second phase was easy.
Nope.
But I can definitely say that, when I got to second phase, I was top of the class and everything because I pretty much almost went through second phase already.
With the divers.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. So if you guys are listening to this podcast, just want to say thank you for that. It was
awesome.
Super, super good time. But inevitably, they weren't happy about that, and to really cap off my time,
your command wasn't happy.
They were not happy about this. The fact that I was TAD there, and to finish off that little chapter of my life, anyway, the last thing that kind of happened there was I got into a car accident, and it wasn't a bad car accident. I was physically fine, had some scratches. I basically got sideswiped by some drunk driver, totaled the car, but I was wearing a seatbelt. Wear your seatbelt, kids.
Yep.
And my command used that as some kind of ammunition to pull me back from being TAD because they said something along the lines of, I didn't fill out an accident report with my parent command. I only filled it out with my TAD command. And I was like, but I did fill it. I filled it out. I let you guys know I was in an accident. They're like, not good enough.
Loophole. Just to screw you.
You're coming back to the paraloft. I'm like, no. Yeah. So I go back to the paraloft and they're like, well, John, we know that your head is not really in the game for packing parachutes anymore. So don't worry. We got something for you. You're going to sit in the sew room and just like sew things until you leave, which is pretty much like the worst, most boring thing you could possibly do. They were just like, we're going to torture you until you leave. We can't stop you from leaving, but we're going to make the best of our time with you. So that first day, I was like, I got onto the computer and I started emailing the detailer that like originally cut my orders to go to Buds. And I got on there, I was like, hey, I have a really big problem going on here. Can I talk to you? And he's like, yeah, give me a call. And he gave me his number. I called him up. I'm like, hey, I don't know how to tell you this or how believable this is. And this is a true story from what I gathered from friends that were overhearing conversations in the head shed. But they're like, they were literally trying to find ways to NJP me. And they couldn't find ways. Like they were doing things like putting me on like watch bills without telling me.
I've
and, like,
seen people try to do that to people before too,
yeah,
man. It's crazy.
And they could be like, yeah, oh, I had you on the watch bill. It was your responsibility to find out with like a name crossed out and your name was written in like pen. But so I'm talking to the detailer, this guy, and he was, I think, a former SEAL who is now a civilian, like doing the orders for spec war, prospects for tadpoles. He's got this thick Tennessee accent. And I'm telling him the story. He's like, "Oh man," he's like, "Damn those black shoes! Screw those!" He gets really swing. Are you allowed to swear on this podcast? I don't know if this is PG-13.
Yeah, no, you're good.
All right, guys, just making sure. He's like, "Damn those fucking black shoes! Like they're always trying to fuck over guys and blah." And I'm like, "So, is there anything I can do? Can I get into like an earlier Buds class? Can I go sooner?" And he's like, "No, man. I wish I could do it. I wish I could." But, these Buds classes, they're full. Like, there's nothing I can do. And I'm like, damn it. Well, lo and behold, I had so much leave on the books because I'd never taken a day of leave because I just didn't need to. I trained. I went to work and trained and went to work. That I was like, hey, I have like over 60 days of leave on the books. Is there anything we can do with this? He's like, oh, no. It's like, well, normally we just give guys like 15 days unless it's like some kind of, extenuating circumstances. And he's like, wait a sec. What if you had like a family emergency? And I'm like, yes, I have a family emergency. He's like, well, all right then. Now that you have a family emergency, I might be able to do something. 2 days later, I had my orders with like 60 days of leave approved.
No way.
No one's ever seen that before.
That's crazy,
yeah.
dude. What?
So I started my checkout process the next day.
That's cool.
Drove down to Coronado the very next day. And my leave wasn't like going and vacationing. My leave was I drove down to Coronado. I got a hotel room on base. And I started training. I was on the beach every day. I was doing the O course every day.
Wow.
And I was just training.
That's huge.
And that was it.
Damn.
And that's like how I got there. I almost feel like my story how I got there was much more impressive than what I actually did there.
Yeah, but either way though, like the resiliency and the basic thing that I heard out of that whole thing was that you volunteered to go do something. You heard an opportunity to fill a gap. And I think so many people run away from stuff like that. Where like that, to me, that was the key move that you made that really started your momentum in the opposite direction. Because the way your command was set up, and I know we've talked about this before, like they did not want to see you succeed. They were used to having people come in there not succeeding. Yeah, there's just another number on the wall. And you were determined to do it. And when you saw that opportunity, you jumped on it. When I think a lot of people would have hesitated to that. Wait, I have to go back out there and do 5-6 weeks or however long it ended up being. Like that was the momentum changer for you. Yeah. And all those circumstances, I know you're given the summary and you had a lot of things lined up that were just meant to freaking happen, dude. Yeah. Because like you pull one of those things out of the way, the accident, the working with the divers, like you wouldn't be here today. Yeah. So it was just meant to happen, man. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm super grateful for any person that even took a second to help me because honestly, even one of those could have been the deciding factor that, set me on a different path. I want to say that I was so determined that it would have happened because my mindset was that nothing was going to stop me. And I didn't care how many bridges that I had to burn, but you just never know. So throughout your career, obviously you had a very successful career, being a dog handler, which has set you up for success today, especially because let's be honest. I see a lot of guys out there doing dog stuff and they don't have combat experience. Yeah. And it always drives me crazy because these guys are putting stuff out where it's like, you know, okay, you're a good dog trainer, but at the same time, that real world experience, come back and be able to apply that to the training is such a big deal to me, especially. And throughout that journey while you were active, what would you say was one of the biggest challenges that you had working with dogs?
So I would say realizing how much you don't know. Because, I mean, honestly, when I had the opportunity to go to the dog teams, I was like, oh, you know what? I like dogs. Yeah, dogs are cool. Like, I might be good with them. And I had a dog growing up, right? Yeah. So this will be good. And I did. I mean, I volunteered. I wanted to go there and get this experience. But when I got there, I realized I don't know shit about shit. So really just being, you know, super humble and realizing that you can learn from anyone. Like, I am so grateful to every trainer that taught me anything because, you know, some of the trainers that taught me stuff, they had no combat experience. Some of the trainers that taught me stuff had no even, like, working dog experience because this is getting further into my, you know, dog learning career. But I was picking the brains of anyone that was respected that had good knowledge from any direction of, like, dog behavior, period. And I just knew that I could process it and be like, okay, that's applicable to me. I'll use that little tidbit, or like, okay, that's good to know, but that's not really applicable to me. And I would just filter it out. But I was just like a sponge. I wanted to learn from everyone, you know.
That's awesome. So you talk about that contrast of guys that didn't have combat experience, that do have combat experience. What's your opinion on the best combination of who you see today in the industry of dog training? Like, if you weren't my go-to resource for dog training, right? Which anybody that's looking to get any type of dog training advice, like, make sure you're following John because he's just putting out some game-changing stuff. But if I didn't have you, where would I start looking for the right dog trainer?
Got it. So one, nothing will ever beat having a super qualified dog trainer in your local area. Meaning that if you have access to like a really good dog trainer in your area, that's going to be super valuable. Because let's be honest, like, not everyone needs to have a Navy SEAL dog trainer, you know, to train their multi-poo. You can, you know, you contact me. We actually do train multi-poos. We train all sorts of, you know, dogs there. We can get more into that later, but, you know, vet them in the sense of talk to people that have dealt with them before. That will be your best. And I'm not just talking like Amazon reviews, because people have already gamed the systems of like,
100%
of like Yelp and all these reviews and Facebook review. Like, people have gamed that. Talk to people who actually have dealt with them one-on-one or had the actual real experience with them and get their opinions.
And that was the thing I was just going to say, because we live in a world where nobody wants to offend anybody.
Yeah.
Right. So you find somebody that people do all the research. You finally find somebody that you think connects with you. And I feel like this is my personal experience too, looking for houses, finding new business relationships. You tend to want to think that you have the answer already. So you tend to want to fast track. You're like, I got it. This person seems like the right fit. And I feel like we tend to bypass that vetting process.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it, 100%. Even with hiring people and finding references. So in order to vet somebody, what advice or what are your top 3 things that you would say, make sure that you vet them in this manner? So I heard you say find somebody that had one-on-one experience with them.
Yes.
What are some other things that you would want them to do, you think, to be effective?
I would say look at their dogs. You know, look at their dogs. Look at the dogs they've trained. Look at the dogs that they've had, because that really... You know, when you're a dog trainer, you know, you're not going off your products like on a shelf. Your dogs are the products. And even the clients are the products, in that, are they teaching the clients anything? Are these clients learning anything from the trainers? So really pick their brains. How knowledgeable, if that client sounds almost like a dog trainer because he knows so much, he probably learned a hell of a lot. And they'll probably even tell you where they learned that from. And how are their dogs? You know, if the first thing when you see that guy's dog, the dog is like uncontrollable and it's a menace to society and it's just a liability risk, you know, you probably want to ask some questions. Be like, how long did you work with this trainer? Because who knows? You know, maybe they only worked for that trainer for like a day and then gave up, you know, or maybe they worked with them for 6 months and beat their head against a wall, you know, and never made any progress whatsoever. So, you know, just ask those kind of questions. Yeah. And don't be afraid to you know, get a couple different opinions, you know.
Totally. And I think that's good, because that point came up, and I know a lot of people have that question. I get hit up all the time. Hey, I'm looking for a dog trainer. I want to train my dog. Whether it's disobedient or they're looking for a new dog, dogs, again, like to me, they're invaluable. I have 2 German Shepherds at home. We're going to get a little litmus test on where Crusher is tomorrow because we're going to go do some reps.
Yeah.
So it's always an interesting part to having John in town because I'm like, all right, how's my dog going to perform?
Yep.
And you can't get enough reps in, especially if you're trusting that dog or your dogs with your family's life. It's just huge. The other thing I wanted to get into with you was the transition. So getting out of the military, like the before and the during has been a huge part of both of our lives, but the after has also, that's who we are now today.
Yeah.
So that transition, you know, I think a big part of that transition for a lot of dog handlers is, all right, you had this dog that you were with, you built that relationship up. I've worked with guys that had their relationship. I've had guys that their dogs were killed, and I've had guys that had to turn their dogs back in. So I imagine that you have a story there with like, I'm getting out, I have to turn my dog back in. What was that transition like for you getting out and getting into the civilian world?
So having the chance to be a dog handler was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, and it could have been one of my worst experiences too. You know, putting everything that you have into your dog, and experiences do vary too. I will say that, you know, I don't think I was a normal dog handler. Not every dog handler was sneaking their dog off base every single night to bring it home with them, you know.
Which is a great thing, right?
Yeah, it was.
That's a good, like.
It was great if it was great if you continued training. It was bad if you just like bring your dog home and just like let him do whatever the hell, you know. But to me, when I was there, the responsibility that I felt when I was at the dog teams was that I knew that my dog was going to be the difference between me or when my brother's coming home. That was my mindset, and I wasn't going to let.
That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't want to let 1 second of opportunity go by that could have made a difference, and I didn't want to be on a route thinking like, man, I should have trained my dog a little more. I never had that feeling because like I don't think I could have trained my dog a little bit more. You know,
that's awesome.
You know, I always rode that edge of like pushing him to the absolute brink of the capabilities of how long and how far we could train in everything we did. And I got a lot of shit for that too, because like the trainers that, you know, at the dog teams, I went through multiple different political shifts of what was going on at the dog teams. I had different companies coming in with different groups of trainers. I want to say first and foremost, thank you to every trainer that ever had a piece in my education, even guys that I don't talk to anymore. I want to say thank you because I learned something from you. You know, every one of you, so thank you. But a lot of the a good group of the trainers are not fans of handlers taking dogs home. They're not fans of handlers seeking outside opinions from other trainers. But I did everything. I talked to every trainer I could ever talk to, you know, just to learn.
The reason I have to laugh, bro, and I'm going to stop you for a second, is just because it goes back to our mentality as kids to push the limits with anything. I mean, honestly, my kid is such a pain in the ass because he has my DNA. Yeah. He's 9 years old, and he drives me nuts because he's constantly trying to figure out how to manipulate the system. And just telling me that story, it just goes back to when we were kids, man. Yeah. It was like, how can we exploit the system? Go to bed at this time. We were up after that when everybody else was asleep, going to do our thing. Like, we did push the limits. Yeah. And that's just one of those things. But how do you find the dynamic of creating that bond? Because I can hear it in your voice, man. I can hear the passion of knowing that you have that type of bond with your dog, and to end the freaking day to be like, I did everything I can being on op, because I can feel that to my core, bro. Like, is the gear that I designed, is the tactics that I did, is the stuff that I taught for combatives, was it as good as I could possibly get it in order to save our lives? Because our lives freaking depend on it. So to go to sleep and put your head on the pillow, to be like, I did everything that I possibly could to train that dog, is a pretty damn good feeling. And you don't get that point. You don't get to that point unless you push the limits like you did. Yeah. I think that's just an awesome aspect of, you know, when you listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger, what does he say? Don't be afraid to break the rules. Yeah. And there's a balance there. And it's really hard to navigate when nobody else has gone down that road and you don't have anybody to look to. So you got to take it for what it's worth. But I wanted to say that because it's an excellent example of like pushing the limits, but knowing when to do it.
Yep. I mean, taking him home at night was just, you know, just one example. But, you know, he was like, you know, part of my family in a weird, like, you know, single bachelor guy with a dog, you know, so he was obviously a seal dog, but I really didn't go anywhere without him. Like, I was doing shit that, you know, you would not, you know, nobody would probably be okay with this. But I would take my dog, like, to restaurants with me. Like, he'd be eating breakfast with me. Because the way I looked at it was like, hey, my dog has to be able to hang out with the guys and not kill them. Because then he's not a capability, he's a liability. You know, because there are some dogs that have bitten operators and things like that. Because team guys are always pushing the limits. What's the biggest capability we can have? And then sometimes they get a little too much than what they need, you know. Always trying to find that line, and you have to make those mistakes to be able to find where you need 100%. To adjust.
1,000%.
But you know, going overseas, I mean, we could probably do a whole entire podcast just what we did overseas, but I'll just sum it up in the sense that, you know, my dog, he, you know, legitimately has some, like, records set. Like, I don't know if there's a book out there with, like, the largest find ever on the War on Terror, but if there is, we'd be in it. Like, he found a cache that was the largest amount of explosives that I've ever heard of in the War on Terror. You know, he was just, you know, phenomenal dog. Now, fast forward, he's still alive, so no one get teary-eyed on me here, but you know, after all that work and all the time we spent overseas together, having to turn him back in was, you know, it was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life. And it was kind of like mixed feelings, because one, you know, you put all that time into him, and it's also an honor, like such an honor to have that dog continue to serve and save lives, because I know he's done probably maybe 6 or 8 deployments post me, you know. So
that's awesome.
He's probably he's about 8.5 years old now, which is freaking, it's old.
That's old
for a working dog.
No
but
doubt.
he's like still going after there and crushing it.
That's pretty sick, dude.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass. Yeah. That's a huge investment to money in the bank. If a dog's out there saving lives, that's pretty badass. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that he should still serve that many deployments afterward. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. I mean, you know how it works, you know, at different commands and teams,
yep.
But pretty much every one of the dog teams is on like rotation, especially the head sheds. So, you know, guys are in charge of the command are only there for like a couple of years and they leave. So really, like, they don't see these dogs throughout their entire career. They just see the dog for 2 years. So guys come in, they're like, this dog's awesome. He's been awesome these 2 years. New head shed comes in. This dog's awesome. So, like, no one's ever even thought about retiring him because he's just still kicking ass and taking names. And just to give you guys, like, the average, you know, before that, like, the average really was, like, dogs would do maybe 2 deployments, maybe 3 if, like, you know, they needed to. But he's had more handlers and more deployments, you know, post me than any other dog I've ever heard of, you know, operating naval special warfare. So
that's badass. So yeah. I can't help but to, you know that as a product of like pushing the limits of them up front to set that base and that foundation. It's just like kids at an early stage of learning is like, this is where they're setting all their problem solving and their decision making at that early age and developing these habits. So you being able to push those limits and find that out, that was the dog that you did it with.
Yeah.
And then there he is still crushing it,
yeah.
You know, years later. That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah. I mean, super proud of him. And I guess I'm really thankful in the sense of when I got him, he was a blank slate. Like, he didn't even know how to sit. So really, I had to take a dog from not even knowing his name.
Wow, I've actually never seen a guy, especially because I was at the command, do that.
Yes.
They already have some level of training.
Yes. So typically, you get a dog, and they've already had, you know, apprehension training. They've already had imprinting, at least imprinting. You know, when I went through the handler course, guys were getting dogs that already had like confirmed kills and deployments under their belt. You know, and then here I am, like, teaching my dog how to sit. So, you know, when I first started this, it was a bumpy road in the beginning. I looked like the biggest smashed up bag of assholes in the entire class because, like I said, I have a dog that doesn't know shit. But I will say that I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for looking like a bag of assholes because that process taught me what it takes to take a dog from nothing to something.
Yep. 1,000%, man. When you don't get the drive and the motivation to be able to get to that level without looking and feeling like that, which you're like, whoa, this is real. I'm not just getting by here. Yeah. I own this. I own every bit of this. So that's a big deal. I love that. I love to hear those stories of struggling in those moments. Because I know, imagine being around a bunch of team guys. This is for the audience. Yeah. Like, because we eat our own and we will friggin' crush any weakness in the room or a workout, or especially an op where a guy takes one half a step wrong to the left. You will not live that down. I mean, I've lost sleep on things that I've done. So when you show up and your dog looks like shit, that's a bad day.
Yes.
That's a bad day.
Yeah.
You know, but to get the drive and the motivation to lose sleep and to be like, I cannot let that happen again.
Yeah.
You know, that puts you in a different state of mind.
Yeah.
And then now here you have a dog that's out there still getting after it.
Yep. I mean, pretty much it was, everybody would do the handler course, and then when they were done, they're like, oh, that was good. My dog found the IED, the practice one, and bit the bad guy, and I'll put him back in the kennel, and time to go out to the bars and go party. And I'd be like, my dog did so shitty. We got to go practice. So, like, he'd be in my hotel room, like, practicing, and, like, just basic obedience, and, like, you know, I would do that till like, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I made sure my dog got enough sleep that he could perform the next day. And, but sure enough, by the end of that handler course, like, he was outperforming almost all the dogs in a lot of the categories. He still had a ways to go post that. I mean, I trained with my dog for over a year before we even deployed. So it was like, we were, you know how in tune you are with other operators next to you with your body language, and how you don't have to look at them and you know exactly what they're thinking, just by their mannerisms of their posture, really. But like with Ito, I use this as an example, but you know, I knew his body language so well that I could tell if there was an IED or a bad guy in a room by just laying him down and seeing his body language. And sometimes from
so
like
impressive, man.
Yes, sometimes from like
so
the front door. So I could be like, there's definitely something hot in there. And I either knew there was going to be an IED in there somewhere, or I knew there was going to be a hidden bad guy, you know.
Yeah, so that body language, like I got to the point where I could tell, you know, I cycled through different dogs, but they would always have their own kind of nuances. But to have that type of bond is so huge, and what that capability and that asset can do for you, man. When you finally had to transition and turn them in, did you find yourself having to do something else to fill that gap? Like, how did that transition happen from turning the dog in to being like, because Devine K9s was born, and where in that transition period, how did that flow right when you got out?
So turning him in, you know, knowing what I knew about dog behavior at the time, because I mean, I was like I said, a mad scientist about this shit. I knew that I could go visit him if I wanted to and things like that, but I'll be honest, like, I turned that leash in and I turned around and I never looked back, not even once. I've even been back to the dog teams to, like, you know, do some training, you know, meet up with other trainers, other handlers and stuff like that. I've been back since, and he's been there, but I purposely stayed away from him. It's because that if there's even a chance that I would interfere with the bond that he's created with whatever handler he's paired with, I don't want to interfere, essentially.
It's crazy.
And I just know that, like, it's so selfish of me to want to go there and, like, scratch
so
his head.
funny you're telling me this. I'm like, but I want you to link back up with him. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like, even for you, and that's pretty impressive discipline to understand that. You know, to have that type of bond is pretty crazy. And I think that's a lot of people. Like, I'm glad we're digging into this because people probably don't realize it's that deep.
Yeah.
You know, I saw Robeek killed, and it was a buddy Mike that lost him, and like, it's like losing your best friend.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a combination of like losing your best friend, losing a kid in a weird way, you know. It's because they're like completely dependent on you, you know. It's kind of like bringing a 2-year-old to war strapped to your waist, but with like razor teeth and you know, thousands of pounds of bite pressure. But I mean, yeah. After I did turn him in, I actually knew that I was going to be turning him in, and I was kind of, you know, trying to find ways to. Not trying to find ways to keep him, but trying to find ways to stay there. And I was trying to do what I always do, which is like, I don't like that answer. You know what I mean? So let's figure this out and make it happen. But, fate didn't swing that way. And I wanted another challenge, and I was like, okay, so I'm not getting, the chance to keep Ito and keep just redeploying over and over again with them. And I thought it was just going to be me and Ito just deploying till, we're fucking in the teams for 35 years or something, but I had this void, and I wanted to keep training dogs. I just knew that, like, I've been doing this for, this long, and I was feeling like I was just scratching the surface in a way. So I went and I started looking at dogs, and I found this dog that was a Malinois mix. It was a shelter dog, and they were just saying, like, man, like, the story on this dog was like, well, this dog likes to bite people, and it just, its drive it's just way too high a drive, and this and that. And I'm just like, man, this sounds like a challenge. So I went and looked at the dog and tested it, and I was like, man, like, these people just don't understand what they have. This is like, it's like if a Formula F1 race car driver, went and looked at a Corvette and was like, of course you guys are having problems. Like, you guys don't even know how to drive a Ford Taurus. Like, give it to me. I'll take it. So I ended up adopting the dog and training this dog. Dog's name is Jean.
Yeah.
And I ended up,
awesome.
imprinting her on explosives, training her protection work, things like that. And, she was just a great, and even behavior mod, but I did it all on her. And she actually ended up becoming a example of what I do with dogs. And because, like, even at this point in my life, people knew I was involved in dogs, and I was helping friends with dogs and helping other friends, and especially a lot of team guys that had issues with their dogs. They would come to me and pick my brain, and I'd go help them with their dog and, like, get their dog on track. And they're like, it's awesome. But I wasn't like, hey, I'm starting a dog company and I'm just going to make this my life journey. That wasn't the mindset yet. I was just trying to help people because I didn't know what else to do. So I just started training. I started taking Jean to the park and training her, and then people would come up to me like,
I remember that.
Yeah, can you help me train my dog?
I remember that. You were like super engaged with going and just doing free training with people.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful thing, because when you think about the transition period, it's like you capture, and we were talking about the percentage of guys that go and continue their passion, or they go do something completely opposite from being a SEAL or special ops or whatever it is. But that says something about what you really wanted to do and how passionate you were about it, because you don't go do something for free that you don't love.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't. Like,
yeah.
People, if you do, I mean, it's you got to fake it, and you weren't faking it.
Yeah. And, I was probably, not doing this the smartest way, because I was like just learning myself in a sense, but I was just being a scientist about it, learning all I could about dog behavior, and then immediately trying to implement these things I learned. And it turned into, like, 5 people would show up, then 6 people would show up, then 20 people would show up. Then before you know it, I had like 35, 40 people showing up to these dog meetups, and I wasn't turning anyone away.
That's pretty cool.
That was my thing. Like, they'd be like, yeah, I have this dog. It's killed 4 people. And it might try to kill someone. I'm like, bring it. We'll work on this shit. Yeah. Yeah. So, I was just actually talking to about this to another dog trainer friend just recently, but I was probably just like one old lady, like, losing her grip on a leash away from, like, being sued into oblivion, but we survived. And I kind of built up a cult following kind of in San Diego, and that people started to get, like, this is prior to Instagram. There was no Instagram. I wasn't doing Facebook. I was like, I made like an ad on Craigslist.
I remember that.
Yeah. And like, people just started showing up and spreading the word that there's like free dog training in the park. Well, eventually it just got so in demand that I couldn't offer just free training anymore, because these people wanted more of me. They were like, I love what you're doing in these free trainings, but I would love to be able to just get one-on-one time with you anytime. How much you charge? And I was like, good question. How much do I charge? What do people charge for this? So I started charging people, and then, started making money. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do that, I should probably have like a business bank account, maybe. I'm like Googling how.
This is so classic, by the way.
How to start business. It's like business checking account. You might want to be an LLC, and I did that. I did that, and then then I'm also volunteering time for other nonprofits and things like that that are trying to give back to the SEAL community and things like that. So I'm like volunteering to go to these events and put on demos with my dogs, or at the time it was actually just dog. And then I had people coming up to me like, how much for the Jean? I want her. I'm like, no, you can't buy Jean. Like, okay, how much if I could get a dog like Jean? Like, how much would it be? And this is funny because this is going back to like even on deployment. But like when I was on deployment, I have this dog who's like has all these capabilities, but he was also super social, almost like the morale dog. Whenever everyone's having a bad day or we had a bad op or anything bad was happening,
That's cool.
people want to come hang out with the dog.
Yeah.
And he was just like one of the boys and really, really super social. And I had this like epiphany. I'm like in my room. I remember this night where I was like in my room and I'm like, man, you know what would be a good idea? What if we got these dogs with these capabilities and they're super social and they could like be a family protection dog? I like thought I like invented this, you know? I'm like, John, you're a goddamn genius. Lo and behold, like people have been doing this only since the caveman days,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like since the first dog, you know, but, you know, so I ended up doing, you know, my first group of dogs, very much renegade style in the sense, you know, I had not a bunch, but I had a few clients that approached me, wanted dogs that like wanted just like Jean. I'm like, well, you know, we can do this. Okay. So I got a bunch of deposits. I booked a flight to Holland. I went and talked to all my contacts that I had in Holland from purchasing dogs over there for the teams, and I went there and went on a shopping spree of dogs that were going to be like what I thought would be fitting the perfect mold of being that family dog that is also going to be able to have these capabilities. And I selected them differently because I knew that, hey, like you can't just select dogs that are going to be these man-eaters dragging Al-Qaeda out with their throat.
100%.
You know, they had to be that perfect balance.
Yep.
And, you know, I brought them back and got right to work training dogs out of my garage.
So awesome, dude.
You know, so I was training these protection dogs out of my garage, in parks, in, you know, public places, you know, taking them through, you know, A to Z, and then integrating them in with the families. Like I'd spend like a week over their house, like teaching them all the, like putting them basically through like a mini handler course. And that was really like the birth of Devine K9s, in that is where, you know, I started to develop some of my processes and how I even do things differently than like these other large kennels that like, you know, have hundreds of dogs where they're like, hey, you should buy this dog. And they're like, ooh, I don't like that. I don't like its color. You should buy this dog. This one's perfect for you. Oh, no? Well, this one's perfect for you. Like I custom do every single dog where I talk to the client, I get their you know, complete family background, whether it, you know, they have kids, how old the kids are, if they have help in the house, what activities they like to do they like to go boating, is this dog going to be flying, do you have cats, do you have other dogs, you know, what kind of house do you live in? And I use all that to like be like a dog matchmaker to then take that dog back and then train it to the capabilities that they need.
Yeah, I think that's super impressive because when you start going through and you have this experience that we have and you look at it, there's not a cookie cutter solution for everybody. Like I wish there was. That's just not the case.
Yeah.
So I've seen you go in and literally do that, identify what's the goal, and then customize the dog to that family, which is friggin' so badass. So we fast tracked how Devine K9s got started. Now here you are setting up a ranch. I mean, the biggest thing too is like I always like to reflect on when people are talking about, you went to the park for free. You went from a small amount of people showing up to where you are today. And like I listen to Gary Vee stuff sometimes, and he talks about like, look, you got to be willing to give your stuff out for free. You got to be willing to do it, and you know you're passionate about what you do and what you love is if you're willing to do that. Because if people don't know who you are, who's going to buy your stuff? Yeah. Why is anybody going to buy your stuff if they don't know who you are? And that's in the world of overwhelming amount of ads that we got flying through Instagram, right? We have to sift through like, what is real? I'm like paralysis just by not even knowing what's what. Mm-hmm. So now your name's out there. Now that you're getting out there as a standard, now you're putting these custom dog patches together. You're setting up a ranch. I think it's epic. So one of the things you talk about customizing a dog, I want to get into as deep as you're willing to get into it, but you're with Sarah now. Mm-hmm. Right? You guys have been together for a while, and I always just love the idea. And you can, like I said, I don't even know what your answer is going to be, but I love the idea to think that you guys complement each other in a way, not only from a relationship standpoint, but also from a business aspect of what she's capable of and what you're capable of. Do you see you guys doing anything together? Maybe give everybody a little bit of background on Sarah real quick, and then then go into that question so people know what the hell I'm talking about.
So Sarah is, you know, one I have to say this, but like she's way better trainer than me. All right, just saying, in the sense of she can teach dogs chain behaviors and free shaping tricks and stuff that, really she's the best in the world. I have not seen anyone quite like it.
That's pretty cool.
And
man.
she's a performer, meaning that there are some dog trainers out there that can get dogs to do incredible things, but they don't actually do anything with the dogs. So if you don't know who Sarah is, go look at America's Got Talent 2017, and she was a 5th place finalist. And you'll see some of the stuff that she was able to pull off with her dogs. And, she's an amazing trainer. And not only that, like just amazing solopreneur in the sense that she's been a one-woman show driving, her dog business since she was like 15 years old.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you and I, like we're very much like mission, centric. But when you think about it, like when you're in the teams, like you're not wired for business.
Yeah, no, logistics are taken care of.
Yeah.
I don't need to set up the travel. I just show up to the spot and get on the truck.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she was used to doing everything herself and with no support, like not even half her family. Like she, unfortunately doesn't talk to one side of her family. And so she had lack of support. So she became very, very, very independent and, but it made her who she is.
Yeah, she's a rock star, man.
Yeah.
She even did a show at the wedding.
Yeah.
A little show with the dog, which went viral, by the way.
You get I don't know, 15 million views.
It's so crazy, dude. It just happened a few weeks ago. That's so crazy.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, she was hoping to get on Ellen, but I guess, Ellen, if you're listening to this podcast, maybe take a look at the video. Just type in wedding dress dog. It'll come up.
It's so crazy. So you guys contrast and complement each other so well. Like, what are the odds of you guys getting together and putting like a package together? Like, I know you guys do separate things, but have you talked about that?
No, absolutely. So we've been working together technically for, over a year, just doing different dog related stuff. But we've already started doing stuff like that where, heck, you can have your cake and eat it too. If you want your dog trained to neutralize a threat and fetch you a beer out of the fridge, like that can be done.
I want that.
Yeah.
I want that. I just want to see you guys put a package together because I know how badass she is and I know how awesome you are. So, there's like this niche. I feel like you guys have this niche, and I get so excited about talking about it because who has the capabilities on both sides to do that? She's a pro, you're a pro, so I just think that's freaking cool. Go get me a beer and then attack the bad guy when I want you to.
And we started doing just things outside the box, and that I wanted to find a way to serve people in ways that they may not have even thought of. Just like anything that would make them feel better, and take some stress out of their life and whatnot. Like we did, just recently trained a dog to save a kid if the kid would fall in the pool. And I'm not saying anyone to leave your children unsupervised and let the dog be the lifeguard, but it's more like it gives you that warm and fuzzy. You're like, hey, if every single fail-safe plan that we have fails, we have one break glass in case of emergency, type of thing. And if it gives someone peace of mind just to have that additional layer, then awesome, So
100%. That's huge. And to be able to get a dog, because dogs are super loyal and capable, it's just getting them the drive to do that.
Yeah.
So we explored a little bit of your business. Again, we could go back to talking about how we grew up all day long. I feel like there's a lot to go into there.
A saga.
But I want to get into Rescue 22. I want to end with talking about Rescue 22 because I think Rescue 22, talking to your team, talking about the efforts, it's a game changer in the sense of you're giving veterans an opportunity with a nonprofit to give them an asset that could potentially save their lives. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a big freaking deal. And I hope that it becomes a major focal point for people that want that type of capability. And I know that you're growing and there's so many things that you're getting into, but I'd love for you to talk about Rescue 22 because I want guys and veterans to know about it, especially people that want to support that type of thing.
Awesome. So if any of you have not heard about it yet, the Rescue 22 Foundation is our nonprofit that does service dogs for veterans. And we do this free of charge to every veteran that comes to us. It's one of a kind in that most service dog nonprofits that you go to, they either one make you come up with the money yourself or they make you do some kind of fundraising. And the last thing I want to do is when someone's like, hey, I would really like to have a dog, is tell them, oh yeah, on top of all the stress and this shit you have going on, go get $25,000-$35,000 and then come back to us. Because something I've also found is like when guys are reaching out for a dog, it's oftentimes that the guys that need it the most are the last to ask.
They're at a bad spot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I don't want to, have that be like, okay, well, come back when you have $35,000 in the next year or 2 or 3 or 4 or whenever how long it takes you. But I have such an awesome team right now, and that I'm partnered with another trainer that's out in Tampa, Eric Ennis. Great trainer, former Army Ranger, canine handler, and the rest of our team is phenomenal. Like, this would not exist if it wasn't for them. At the end of the day, I'm just a guy that knows a little bit more than average about dogs, where when it comes to actually running a nonprofit, everything relies on your accounting and making sure that you have all your financial disclosures that are all set and T's crossed and your I's dotted.
100%.
And just having full accountability of everything. And so if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't even have a nonprofit. But we're working on everything from PTSD service dogs to mobility assistance dogs, to everything, to getting dogs for paraplegics that have no use of their arms or legs, and like this dog is giving them deep pressure therapy and able to like fetch objects and put in their mouth and do all sorts of super complex tasks. And it really just takes they take a long time. They take a long time to train to be able to do all those complex tasks. But I'm super proud of what we've been incorporated now for 1 year. So first year of being incorporated. And we just recently got the thumbs up on being the first and only service dog nonprofit to be put on to a research initiative to finally prove definitively, once and for all,
it's huge,
how service dogs are actually helping veterans with empirical evidence and data.
It's awesome.
Because they need like scientific research and actual numbers. Because it's one thing to be like, I have a dog and it saved my life. But they're like, okay, but like, how? Like, what's your cortisol levels? What's your, heart rate? What's your stress levels? Like, how objectively did this, they need these numbers to be able to have the government actually start to give support to this. So this is the first step that is needed to get this like federally recognized, So, we're hoping that with this research initiative, we're going to help every service dog nonprofit. So if we can get this thing, rolling, this is going to help service dogs as a whole across the board, across the entire country.
That's so awesome, dude. And if you're a veteran listening to this, it's a big deal, because I've seen guys get out of the military. I've seen guys deal with issues. I've seen guys, there's nothing like having a dog around you is just freaking awesome. And when you have the right dog around you that's trained the right way, it can literally change the game of your, exactly what you just said, your cortisol level. And then to be in a position to have a nonprofit that's going to collect the data on the effectiveness of how a dog can change your life. Like, it's huge, dude. I'm going to pray for your success with Rescue 22, because it can literally save guys' lives. And to be able to take where you were in the military, to be able to transition, find your passion, and then help a nonprofit like this, like, to me, it's a win-win-win. Yeah. And you're starting the path of something very awesome, because not only are you able to do what you love, but you're able to give back too. Yep. So bravo Zulu to your whole team, everybody that's been helping you out with that mission. Again, what's the website again?
www.rescue22foundation.org.
Cool. And you can find everything else from going to Devine K9s too, how to follow you. That's the kind of the focal point of everything that I know people are attracted to, and what you're doing, what you're up to. It's been, like I said, growing up together and seeing the path and the journey that we've been on. One thing that came to mind today, and I'll end by saying this: keep the people that have been with you from the beginning close, and never take those people for granted, and put the work in. I got a buddy, Ben, as well, that's out doing some movie stuff, but he always said, your close relationships and real friends take hard work. Put the effort in. I know John and I are working on that, something that's a lifelong journey, but keep the people that are close to you really close. Don't ever take it for granted. It's been awesome having you on, brother. I'm sure we'll probably do it again. We got a lot to do. We got a lot to take care of.
Absolutely.
John Devine K9s, Adaptive X brand asset, and just all around badass. Go check him out. Go follow him. And shoot, man, we can sit here and talk all day. But this has been a badass podcast. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. And John, thanks a lot for coming on, bro. Look forward to doing it again.
I'll be coming back, whether you like it or not.
Right on, man. All right, guys, we are out.